excited to introduce my guest today, Christine Kloser. Welcome, Christine. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you, Alexandra. I'm super excited to be here with you and everyone here.
Absolutely. So let me just introduce you and give a little quick bio on you. Christine Kloser is a transformational author coach, USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling author, and award-winning publisher who helps successful professionals, experts, and leaders fulfill their calling to write and publish a book that transforms lives in a powerful and permanent way, starting with their own. She's founder of the Get Your Book Done program and creator of the Transformational Author Experience, with trainings that have impacted 90,000 people in 127 countries and counting, right? Because I'm sure it's going to continue to increase. And Christine has been featured in the New York Times, Entrepreneur Magazine, Fox, and many more, and has shared or hosted stages with the biggest names in the transformational author world, such as Neil Donald Walsh, Marianne Williamson, Lisa Nichols, and dozens more. And a transformational event facilitator since 1997 and author coach since 2003, Christine inspires writers through her proven programs and trainings, where she brings all of her expertise, heart, and wisdom forward, delivering an authentic and refreshing approach to a crowded and often confusing author space. I am so excited to have you here. I think I've used the word excited like 3 times already. I've known about you and your work for about a decade. And it just, when we talk about the name of the series is Mission to Millions, and it's about creating an impact on the world. And you, with your work with authors, that's an incredible way to really start to share your mission and make an impact in the world. So I'd love to know how did you get started working with authors?
This is always such an interesting question because it was not intentional. Like I'm a completely accidental like author coach and award-winning publisher. It was 2002. My husband and I were newlyweds. We had gotten married in 2001 and we were at a seminar and he had this like download, this moment of crystal clarity as to where his body temperature like rose 5 degrees. I could feel it happening next to me, like what's happening over there? He's like, I'm going to write a book. I was like, great. Like, I'm sure like I would, fantasize about being an author someday and, oh, I want to write a book, but never did anything about it. And my husband's like, I want to write a book. I was like, great. He goes, I'm going to go interview hundreds of Major League Baseball players about the mindset of how you succeed in a game of failure. And that's what I want my book to be about, like all these little quotes and snippets. I'm like, great, honey. You do that and I'll figure out how to publish it. Because like, quite honestly, I mean, he didn't know a single Major League Baseball player. He didn't know anyone who knew a Major League Baseball player. I thought, what are the chances? But I wanted to support my husband. We were, newlyweds. And he went on to interview over 300 Major League Baseball players from all 30 Major League teams. So I had to figure out how to publish a book. So his book came out in 2004. My first book actually came out 2 weeks after his because I figured as long as I'm doing one for him, might as well do one for myself. So what I did was an anthology. I ran a networking group called the Network for Empowering Women Entrepreneurs at the time in Los Angeles. And I invited my members to like contribute some money and contribute a chapter and I'd get us published. And our book called Inspiration to Realization came out in 2004. And I was so excited because I checked off, become a published author off my list, and so did 39 other amazing, powerful women entrepreneurs. And I thought that would be the end of it. Okay, so I did that. Except that book was written up in Entrepreneur Magazine in the summer of 2005 as one of the best books for women entrepreneurs to read that summer. So then all the other women that did, or not all, but a lot of the other women that didn't participate in that book from my networking group were like, when are you doing the next one? Like, oh, the next, what do you mean? The next one. So then I did the next one and the next one. And then they kept begging me to help them write their own books, which led to me creating my signature trademarked Get Your Book Done program in 2007. And we've been, helping authors write and publish books since then, ins and outs along the way, but really started back in 2004 because of my husband's idea in 2002.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's quite a journey.
Wow. When in 2010, actually, I actually, yeah, 2010, I resigned from the corporate world. And the first day of 2011, I became an entrepreneur, a full time entrepreneur. And I ended up writing my first book that year. And I remember I turned 30 that year. And I think it was something about turning 30 that got me thinking, like, oh my gosh, what if I die next year? If I die now, what am I going to do? Yep. So it was really something about my legacy. I realized that I needed to leave a legacy. Like that's part of my making an impact. And so I ended up writing my first book that year. And, that was my story. And I know you mentioned 90,000 people have worked with you over the years. And how can someone actually, what is a transformational author, and how can a transformation or a future transformational author get started writing their own transformational book? I'd love to know.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting. Like back in 2011, I had written the wrong book. I had built the wrong business. I was really out of alignment in what I was doing, and I was forced to reconcile with myself, and close my business. It was a really difficult time, and in that time, when I was begging for the universe to show me what was next, how was this challenging, heartbreaking, very painful time for me meant to serve. And what the universe, was like, transformational author experience. You need to do the transformational author experience. And this was a name that I had that I'd received in 2010. But when I tested it with some colleagues who were like 6 and 7 figure, very successful business owners across the board, except for one of my colleagues, they all said that name is the worst. It'll never work. Like no one's going to buy anything. Like, what even is the transformational author experience? So I shut it away forever until this very, dark night of the soul experience in early 2011. And this was the only thing coming. So I went to Google and I put in quotes, transformational author. Like I wanted to know what it meant, like this thing that I'm supposed to be doing. Probably one of the only times I've ever had Google come up saying like, no search responses available. This was, 10 years ago. It's all over the place now, but 10 years ago, crickets on Google. So I had to figure out what it was. And for me, it was less of a definition and more of a way of being in relation to your book. So what it means to be a transformational author is someone, and I wrote a whole book about this because it's a tool called the Transformation Quadrant. And what that is that you're willing to look at writing your book through 4 lenses. And you'll want to write these down as 4 questions to contemplate. And if you want to read the book, just go grab it on Amazon. It's called the Transformation Quadrant. But the 4 questions, first and foremost, are what transformation do I want for myself as a result of writing this book? Okay, like a epitome of being a transformational author is that you get that this is a transformational process. Yes, it's going to impact your readers. Yes, it's going to impact your business. Yes, it's going to impact the world. But the transformation afoot for you in the process is potent and powerful and life-changing. So that's the first lens, is through yourself. Second question to ask yourself, and the second lens a transformational looks through, a transformational author looks through, is what is the transformation that I want for my readers? So this like goes beyond like the surfacey, oh, I want them to blah, blah, blah. This is like you're really connecting with your ideal reader and imagining them after they've read your book and how it's changed their life and what is that transformation you want for them. So that's the second lens. The third lens, and the question to ask here, is what is the transformation that I want for my business as a result of writing this book? Very important lesson. I mean, you're here because you're up to stuff in the world. You want to impact, you want to make millions. You want this to really, be a transformational, impactful, profitable business. And your book can literally be like the key that turns on the engine of your business, right? I built a $500,000 business in like 6 months after having a book come out. Misaligned business, as I mentioned earlier, which is never a good thing. But your book can really change things for you in terms of your business. So you got to be clear the transformation you want. So that's the third lens a transformational author looks through. And ultimately, the fourth lens and the fourth question that a transformational author sort of embodies and looks through is, what is the transformation that you want for the world? as a result of this book being written. And that's where you really get to connect with, if everyone who needed this book read it, embodied it, and lived differently as a result of it, how could the world be different? And when you look out at the world today, like you see, there's a lot of hurting. There's a lot of people who need what you've got to offer, because the ripple effect impact is huge. So it's critical that you look through these four lenses. And the very first step that every single client I've ever worked with, not ever, this was like the first few years of the Get Your Book Done program, these questions weren't a part of it. I had to go through my own dark night of the soul to add this whole layer to what I do. But the best place to get started is in taking some time to answer these four questions for yourself, because they will help guide and direct and kind of be like your North Star through the entire book writing process.
Hmm. I love those four questions because it's really a holistic approach. It's like starting, I use the word mission. So it's like kind of starting, seems like to me, starting with that. And then also, how can you serve your ideal client? And then how can it serve your business? And then, like you said, the world. So for me, it's all interrelated. If they just reflect on those four questions, they're actually going to get clarity, not just about their book, but about their business and their mission and purpose in life, how they can make the biggest impact in the world. So those are four super impactful questions.
Yeah.
And I usually take very, very good notes. So I'm going to be writing and doing some self-reflection myself after this. So thank you for sharing that.
Of
Incredible.
course, my pleasure.
And the name of the book again is?
The Transformation Quadrant, how to blueprint your book in 15 minutes or less. Because if you do just sit for 15 minutes and get this kind of clarity, you'll see your book, and as you said, so many other pieces begin to become more clear.
Mm-hmm.
I just had someone who read the book, was like, I'd already started writing my book, but just doing this simple but powerful exercise has shown me the work I need to do to kind of get some of the foundation in place before I even start writing anymore. Because I see the missing holes now. I didn't look through this lens because nobody's teaching this lens, because I, developed it 10 years ago. So it's the first thing we make all of our, not make, not like we force them, but it is, I think, a really critical step for getting started.
And you mentioned something about you wrote the book and then you ended up having a multiple six-figure business soon thereafter. You weren't perfectly in alignment, but you needed to get started, right? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like we get caught up in the making that first move or how to get started, and we get analysis paralysis in many cases.
Yeah.
But you just got started. You put it out there, you took a big step, you put yourself out there, you spoke up, you shared your mission and your message, and then you ended up earning multiple six figures from that. So I think that's a really great lesson. Even though you were sharpening the saw, making it more in alignment, but really a great testament to the work that you had been doing up until then as well.
Well, and the power of a book, right? And the power of a book, and the importance of making sure that these questions for yourself are answered first. Because I was not clear on the first question at all about the transformation that I really, really wanted for myself. And the coach I was working at the time, when I expressed some doubt, was just like, just kind of blew it off, like, that's no, but you're just scared because everything's happening for you. I'm like, no, I know the difference between fear and something not feeling right, and something doesn't feel right. 10 years ago, I wasn't the woman that I am today, and didn't have the strength to push back on this, coach who I had paid all this money to. I was like, I guess I'm supposed to listen to him and just keep going anyway. So I did. And yes, the book, thousands of people have read it. Neil Donald Walsh wrote the foreword. It continues to have impact, 11, 12 years later. The book is called The Freedom Formula: How to Put Soul in Your Business and Money in Your Bank. Another great read. If you're heading over to Amazon for the other one, pick up The Freedom Formula as well. But it wasn't the right book at the time. But thank goodness, because that is what deepened my teaching. That is what opened up this body of work around what it means to be a transformational author. And that is also what helped me just deepen my commitment to every and any author that I work with, to make sure that they're not just like being cranked through some formula or put through some template or writing a book because like the market says that that's the book that they should write. Like if you're going to build something that's really right for you. That's the only way it's going to be sustainable. And I learned the hard way. It's like
Mm,
I pulled the plug on everything. It was like went through bankruptcy, foreclosure on my home. Like when I say it was bad, it was bad. And I don't ever want anyone to ever do that again. So if we're coaching someone on books or business, the alignment piece and these 4 questions in the transformation quadrant are the most critical questions to get started with. Get clear on those, and it's like, bang, you kind of start clearing the way for the magic to happen.
you use the word sustainable, and I love
Yeah.
that because, to your point, you weren't perfectly in alignment, and then you didn't end up creating the sustainable business. So you got the income, but it wasn't sustainable.
It was like a house of cards. It's like the income came in, but without a solid foundation, it imploded. I imploded. It all imploded. I had to pull the plug on everything.
Mm.
Yeah, it was not fun.
At the same time, and this is kind of interesting because I know it's happened to me and I know it's happened to some of my clients as well. It's almost like that also then became the learning lesson and then an opportunity. And I'm sure you've written other books or at least other pieces or written other things as that's a learning lesson. So it's really cool how even in our quote unquote failures or when we've imploded, that is something we can rise from and we can use that experience to serve ourselves and others.
I wouldn't change it for anything. Like I learned in that very compressed, intense time of things not feeling right and coming apart and me coming apart. I learned more in that compressed time, like in that year, like 2010 going into 2011. I learned more than I would have probably in decades if I had just kind of kept going and putting on the happy face and making it work. No, when you get stripped of everything, like you really have to find everything inside of you when everything outside is like, you know, not there anymore. And
Mm.
it was one of the biggest blessings of my life in for sure. And it's, I've made millions and millions of dollars since, in this place, which is very solid, feels amazing, has had a huge impact around the world, in more than 100 countries, as you mentioned. And, we had 1,500 clients go through our program, my Get Your Book Done program, and it is rock solid.
Mm.
And it feels amazing. And especially amazing when I know what it feels like to build on a house of cards that doesn't feel amazing.
Wow. You mentioned 2011. I think I mentioned 2011 too. There was something about that year because that
Yeah.
was the year. So I was in corporate and then I became an entrepreneur. All my savings went away that year. And I had to really quickly figure out what the heck I was going to do because I had a business that I had started and I wasn't earning enough income. And so it was like within 5 to 6 months after that, that I wrote my first book. And so, it was just so interesting that the book came out, that particular book came after my like low moment that year over that 6 months. And
Yeah, it was a potent time.
it was,
2011 for so many people.
yeah.
It was a potent, really massive year of shift and
Mm.
change and transformation and up level and expansion and deepening and evolving.
What was wild is that over the couple of years prior to that, I was in the process of writing a couple of other books, but never finished any of those. And then when I started that book in 2011, I wrote it in 3 weeks. And then I distributed, like it launched within, another 2.5 months. So like from zero to launch, it was about 3 months. And it was one of those things. I got the idea in the middle of the night and there was no way I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
So it's like when you get that inspiration, it was God given. It was divinely inspired, and there was nothing that was going to get in my way. And I know with a transformational book and being a transformational author, at least from my perspective, I feel so guided, so divinely inspired to get my mission and my message out there. So it's wonderful work that you're doing with all of these authors.
Thank you. It's fun too. Like I love it. It's me. I love what we get to do with authors, because we, not only do we help them, write and publish books, because we have the coaching and consulting side of the company that helps people write, and then we have a second company that's an independent publishing company. So we see them all the way through the finish line of publishing. Like, this is some few of the books we've published behind me here, and it's like, it really is like watching someone birth and
Mm.
step into their greatest expression, most authentic expression in the world. And it is, I mean, every time we see an author, birth their book into the world, it's like, it's just such an awesome, like awe-inspiring experience, because we know where they started and we know where they ended, and we've witnessed them really step into their calling, their message, their purpose, their mission. And it's like, and they don't just do it for themselves, like they're doing it with a book then that brings that mission out into the world. It's like, I don't know, it's awesome.
What an incredible resource that you're offering there for these authors. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah, it is. We love it. We got a good thing going on here between the two companies for sure.
So, just to get a little clarity, I wanted to ask you, what are the most important words an author will ever write?
Oh, good question. Here's the thing. They're not the right words that you put inside the book. Okay. The 250, like there's a count. The 250 most important words you will ever write for your book. I'm speaking specifically to nonfiction authors, which most of you mission-based messengers, you're writing nonfiction. It's the 250 words on the back cover of your book that will expand to also be your Amazon description. Because if you are not clear in those 250 words, and you cannot communicate clearly and concisely what the book is about, who it's for, the benefits they're going to get from reading it, like the promise of the book, you're not yet clear enough on the message of your book to actually write it. So on my Get Your Book Done program, one of the things I do is I give people a template, and I'm like, okay, before you start writing your book, write at least the first draft of the 250 words of your back cover copy. And that will give you a read on how ready you are to actually write the book. And because they're the marketing words, right? You're all business owners or wannabe business owners, because they're the marketing words that are going to get this book into people's hands and give you words to speak when you're having a conversation with someone on Zoom or at a cocktail party or over a lunch or a networking event. Those words are the words that are going to get people engaged and connected to you and buying the book. That is why they're the most important words, because they're the ones that get it into people's hands so they can get the transformation that you identified in the reader quadrant of the transformation quadrant. So it's
Wow.
not the words in the book that are most important.
That is incredible advice. And as a coach, a business coach, and a strategist, also, it's so important. You mentioned clear and concise. If you can get really clear, it's kind of like an elevator pitch of sorts, right? Maybe a little longer than, but being clear and concise. It's like what the focus is, and you don't add all of this extra stuff and all of this extra fluff. So so as an author what you're writing about, and then the person reading it, picks it up and knows what you're writing about. So I love
Yeah.
that. So important. We've
Yeah.
talked about clarity a few times already today, so that's so key. And just another question about this is, I think, so key for entrepreneurs. What is one? You can give a couple more, but at least one. What is one of the biggest mistakes that authors should avoid?
Oh my God. Writing the book without having the guardrails in place. It's like one of the ways that I teach it to my clients is like, if you imagine a river, if the river doesn't have river banks and the water flows, that water ends up everywhere and makes a mess, and it's unruly and it's damaging, and it's nearly impossible to get all of that water back into the way that you want it to go. Biggest mistake I see authors make is they don't get the riverbanks of their book, the foundation, the guardrails, the purpose, the structure, the outline, the connection to the ideal reader, the clarity on the problem that their book is going to solve, and the promise, for the reader. And they just start writing. And they, like part of the words, go over here in a journal, and part of the words go over here in a voice memo, and part of the words are on Google Drive, and some of the words are written in, Word or in Pages or whatever, software you're using. Other words are scribbled onto a napkin or, notes in a phone. And that's like the river without any riverbanks. It's just words everywhere with no structure. And trying to rally and organize and pull together the information after it's been written is so much more difficult than just building the foundation, building the riverbanks first, so that as the flow happens, which won't be water, it'll be words for you in your book, it happens inside of that container. So the words are pointed, right? And there is a purpose and a flow that you are following. And it's not this big mess with, all this stuff written that like, I don't even know what goes first or what goes next, or I don't know how this fits in the book. I see so many authors make that mistake. So I'm glad you asked the question. And we actually, I'll be sharing a free resource that will give you the first few steps to getting those guardrails, getting the, riverbanks in place so your words can flow. We've got something to help you get started doing that.
Beautiful. Would you mind sharing that now?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. As you've heard me mention a little bit, I have my award-winning Get Your Book Done program that's been producing authors since 2007. And fairly recently, we decided to open up the entire first module, which is the key module to start building that foundation. Because I don't want any author to write a book and build it on top of a house of cards, like a not solid foundation like I did the first time. So we've made it available for you, the entire first module, absolutely free to start building that foundation. And hopefully this will be an easy enough domain to remember, but it's freebookwritinghelp.com. Again, that's freebookwritinghelp.com is where you can go. And, there's video lessons, it's downloadable action guides. You get into my membership site where everything is. It's just that you'll only have access to that first module with the multiple lessons, but it's a great way to get started building the foundation, shoring up the riverbanks, and really giving yourself a solid foundation for success with your book. So I highly suggest you go check that out. We've had, a lot of people go through oh my God, thank you so much. That really made a difference. So yeah, freebookwritinghelp.com is where you can get access to that.
Wow. Thank you so much, Christy. we've been haven't been talking that long, and just so many resources, so much content. This has been such a packed talk today. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I wanted to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
That is, what would you tell your younger self? What advice would you give your younger self if you could?
Trust the unfolding. Relax and trust the unfolding. It's all happening for your highest good. And yeah, I think that's the most important thing. Trust, and that trust and relaxation goes into the book writing process as well. Trust that it's happening, it's unfolding. And the more you can relax into what you're creating, a book, a business, both, the more you can relax and just sit back and trusting that process, the easier it's going to go, the more fun you're going to have, the faster it's going to manifest. And I stressed myself out way too much in my younger years. Just trying to make it be a certain way. And yeah, relax and trust the process, I'd say would be the key words.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for being here with me today, for sharing such incredible, powerful content and wisdom. The authors, the aspiring authors who are watching this are going to get so much value. So thank you so much. And we'll have in the show notes, we'll have all the resources that you mentioned today. So thank you again for your time. And I love to do this again. Hopefully soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the invitation, and write powerfully, everyone. World needs your message.
Yay!
For more help growing your visibility and monetizing your brand, go to alexanderfigueredo.com. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Thank you.